the state of New York versus Donald Trump. On this first trial of an ex-president in American history, and what we can say as we report right now, what will be Donald Trump's only criminal case that is definitely headed to trial before this election. Tonight, we'll hear from legal experts Maya Wiley and Christy Greenberg. And over the course of the hour, for perspective on the history, Michael Beschloss on a literally unprecedented trial and reckoning for the nation. We begin right now with the facts, how we got to this momentous and significant trial as jury selection is set to begin Monday. We don't know how it will end, but we know it will be marked in history and in law schools and in many other conversations for decades to come in this nation. The New York DA, Alvin Bragg, made legal history as the very first prosecutor to ever indict any former president, any decade, any century, any state. This is the first. He was the first to indict Trump, and the case is based on what is in many ways a set of proven hush money payments that we all now know occurred in 2016. What is new, and the reason that Donald Trump could be facing a felony conviction or a jail sentence, is that this DA indicted those now known payments and scandals as criminal lies. He has charged Donald Trump for falsifying business records and how he handled those payments, orchestrating a scheme to distort the election, purchasing negative information, and intentionally mischaracterizing those then recorded payments. Now, let me tell you something right up top here as we get ready for this trial of the decade or the century. This is ultimately about facts. And by the standards of, say, whether you have the evidence to show something is true, or the standards of journalism when we say we have reported or confirmed something as a fact, that part I just mentioned is a fact. It is established. There are detailed records of those purchases. There are several eyewitnesses and direct participants to it. It is established. But we begin right now with another hard legal issue for this DA. What I just said sounds bad for Trump, but is not itself a felony under the law. To make this a felony case, this DA used a powerful tool that, to be clear, many prosecutors use all the time. He took all this damning evidence against his potential defendant, Trump, and he combined it into a legal argument for a larger crime. It's the same way we've seen from movies to real life other prosecutors use RICO or financial schemes to argue that a group is part of a larger conspiracy. So that is the kind of approach this DA took, taking what I just referred to, the kind of established lies, the business records lies, which are a misdemeanor in New York State, a smaller infraction, and using a valid law to combine it into an election plot felony. What you see on your screen is what the jury will see, and this is from the DA's office. This is not one of those summaries we've made here as journalists. This is basically the theory going down through those arrows about how all of these lies, some of them proven basically, like the lie is about the retainer payments, becoming an election crime. So if you remember nothing else, keep that in mind. It is the crux of this case. The DA telling the jury, okay, a lie alone is a misdemeanor. But this was a lie plus a grave campaign crime. Now, Trump is legally presumed innocent, and he will have defense lawyers who can argue that the state basically took a bunch of different things that they argue is small and tried to kind of take all the small things, throw them against the wall. And they'll argue this isn't really a true big felony case, and it should be resolved the way other financial misdemeanors are resolved. The jury is also going to hear a lot of messy details about backroom deals, secret payments, and alleged trysts. The DA will argue those plots to hide and illegally buy stories about those contacts is a big deal. And to understand all of this, the jury and anyone else following, which might be you and a heck of a lot of other people who are interested in law, justice, and politics, well, to get into it, you really got to go all the way back 2 election cycles to 2016 and the infamous tape that many thought, including Republicans and Trump insiders at the time, would basically be the end of Donald Trump's hopes for the presidency.
You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the
Now, you take a look at that, you take it all together, and let me show you the next point here. That was a big deal. The blowback was powerful, and a lot of people thought the race was over.
Donald Trump's presidential campaign in turmoil tonight, facing withering political fallout.
When the tape comes out, he drops from 41 to 38. Then on the weekend, after everybody's seen the tape, he falls through the floor. That's why they are driving the Republican Party and Donald Trump off a cliff and into the political abyss.
You do not recover from this. This election ended. All I can say is I am sorry.
Now, the election did not end. Those polls and much of the criticism did probably capture something, an initial horror and revulsion away from Trump. And that's important for the reasons I'm going to explain now legally. The point is not that pundits overreacted or people thought America could not stomach that guy on that tape becoming president. We've had those debates for years. We can continue to have them. But tonight we're looking at how this will matter only in the context of this criminal trial of defendant Trump. The events hurt Trump, and he did get fewer votes, and he did lose women under 40, but he won the Electoral College. The legal case only cares about how that tape and the reaction may show Donald Trump's motivation at the time, what prosecutors call criminal intent. And the DA is arguing Donald Trump is a criminal. So this isn't about some later November quarterbacking post-election, even though this relates to an election. It's not about that. The case will involve politics only to go back to Trump's criminal intent. And again, his lawyers may have defenses to this. But there will be fascinating political observations in the service of proving what the DA says was Trump's clear criminal intent, because they had a campaign criminal motive. So we've heard about these reports of a total panic within the campaign. As the indictment notes, there was a catalyst from that panic to then get the hush money payments first going towards Stormy Daniels. And that was arranged by now star witness Michael Cohen. $130K to hide the story, which was finished up 3 days after that Access Hollywood tape broke. The indictment alleges Trump was hoping to just drag it out so he'd never have to pay Daniels at all, which, while misleading or disingenuous, is not itself any kind of crime. But, again, it goes to the criminal intent because he instructed Cohen delay the payment to Daniels until after the election. That was the original plan. At that point, it would not matter after the election if the story became public, quote unquote. DA Bragg cites that as the exact evidence for why this was a campaign crime cover-up, rather than just some generalized desire to make that story go away. And again, as I mentioned, Trump's lawyers may argue, no, this was an embarrassing thing. He may have paid for these kind of things before, and therefore they're going to argue it wasn't with the criminal intent to break campaign laws. Now, more evidence, though, bolsters DA Bragg's side and these allegations, because there was another scenario involving a second woman, you may remember, a former model named Karen McDougal. DA Bragg says she was also paid $150K, just from a different source. Instead of Cohen taking that money on behalf of Trump, this tabloid, The Inquirer, basically used trickery to get her to be silent about her history with Trump. The publisher actually has already confirmed this to federal prosecutors. Remember when I said some of this has been established? Well, all the way back in 2018, this is a different office than the DA, got that confirmation with receipts by giving that tabloid figure immunity. And 2 former lawyers for that model I mentioned, Miss McDougal, told us about this. And I asked if they were aware of what the potential intent, what the motivation was of the tabloid when getting that story.
Well, I'm not so sure if it was, if I was aware of it at the time that it was their intent to bury the story, but I think that they had clearly announced their editorial preferential candidate.
Was the National Enquirer acting as the arm of Donald Trump and Michael Cohen? And if so, is there something wrong with that?
We strongly suspect they were.
Those are lawyers speaking like lawyers, but saying that they had the reason to believe the evidence, the suspecting material, that was the plot. Now, that was years ago, because as I've told you, we always try to go as close to the source as we can. If the source won't talk, but they have an ally or a lawyer, we talk to them. The DA says Trump was aware of those transactions, and Cohen was concerned enough to secretly tape Trump at the time. This was back when Cohen worked for Trump, long before he flipped. And now it's evidence showing Trump was apparently in the loop about these sordid tabloid deals, including with the tabloid chief, David Pecker.
I need to open up a company for the transfer of all of that info regarding our friend David. I spoke to Alan about it when it comes time for the financing, which will be...
Listen, what financing?
We'll have to pay you. So
Don't pay with cash.
No.
Pay with cash. If you've watched The Beat, I've mentioned this before, and I bet you the jury's going to get an earful about this because it's so bad for Trump. And in that private little secret setting, he may have thought it would never come out. He clearly didn't know that Cohen was taping him. And he says, pay with cash so we can continue to hide it. He sure as heck didn't sound like he was planning to tell the truth or tell the IRS or anything like that. Cohen says, no. What happens next goes to why the DA is so confident, they say, that they can nail Trump on criminal intent, bring home the case, and win it. Trump accused of this hush money cover-up, and here's where these false records come into play. After Trump became president, he worked with a man who's right now, as I'm reporting this for you, back doing his second term in Rikers Island Jail in New York. You may remember the name, Trump's CFO, Alan Weisselberg. He was involved in these payments which Cohen made. The images might look familiar because over the course of 2017, Trump as president sent Cohen several checks that they called for retainer or tax purposes. And what's bad for defendant Trump is, while he might be a busy president and he might be a busy business owner, he was personally signing all these checks himself. The DA alleges that put the Trump organization on the hook to then falsify records and call what were payments to an external party, quote, legal fees. Now, in business, you can't just pay A and call it something for B. If anyone could do that all the time, well, you wouldn't have any taxes paid or accurate records. All of this came out when the Wall Street Journal broke the original story here in 2018. And Donald Trump lied. In his first public comments, he first claimed he didn't know what was going on when he was intimately involved in this for years. We have the tape showing that, so that's why I can accurately, carefully, and clearly call it a lie. And then he went on to blame his lawyer.
Mr. President, did you know about the $130,000 payment to Stormy Daniels? Then why did Michael Cohen make this if there was no truth or allegation?
Well, you have to ask Michael Cohen. Michael's my attorney, and you'll have to ask Michael.
No, the claim there is a bald-faced lie, and there aren't a lot of ways to spin it because it's so clear. No, he says he didn't know about something that we actually have him on tape strategizing about. No, he says about something that we have him on record paper signing about. And he does tend to keep track of the money that does get pulled out of him. And as I mentioned earlier in the report, it was a long time coming to even get those bills paid. Now, this wasn't going to hold up. You had Cohen out there, you had investigators out there, and you have a lot of paper records, financial records out there. So other lawyers who were involved for Donald Trump, who've also themselves gone on to be indicted, were then figuring out the strategy. And so while it might look sloppy, we know a lot more now than we did then. What we know now is that lawyers around Trump figured this is going to come out, so we got to start getting it out. And someone who then was relatively new to the legal team, Rudy Giuliani, discussed it on Fox. Take a look.
They funneled it through the law firm. Funneled through the law firm, and the president repaid it. Oh, I didn't know he did. Yep. There's no campaign finance law. Zero.
You can hear Sean Hannity's disembodied voice. Oh, I didn't know that. I guess you have to change your talking points if all you do is repeat what Trump says. Now, that moment there looks almost farcical all these years later. And Rudy Giuliani would go on from that failed cover-up to the big lie, to, as I mentioned, being a co-defendant with Donald Trump in the RICO case, which may not go to trial before November, but is a huge deal down in Georgia. Meanwhile, Cohen was initially saying Trump was not involved in the payments. Now, we know that to be false, as I mentioned, for the reasons stated. Knowing that it's false and then that some of them were lying doesn't mean they've yet met the burden for a criminal conviction. I'm trying to be very precise with you here about what the DA has to prove, but we do know they were lying. And Stormy Daniels' then attorney who also has had his own legal problems since then, Michael Avenatti, convicted for a string of crimes related to dishonesty, back then was leading this charge against Trump and Cohen and called the claim ludicrous when he appeared on this very program, The Beat, in 2018.
This suggestion that somehow Mr. Cohen was operating on his own volition, not reporting to anyone, spending all of this time. I mean, this was not a negotiation that took 30 minutes. The fact that Mr. Cohen wants the American people to believe that he was just out there doing all of this on his own and not reporting to anybody about it, it's not believable.
Daniels' then attorney saying it wasn't believable. It wasn't very believable, and Cohen would later recant. Cohen first took the fall. He pled guilty to tax fraud and lying charges in connection with this very payment. And he copped to a federal campaign finance crime, which again was not for his own personal benefit at the time, but was for Donald Trump. He went to prison for all of that. And in an effort to reduce the sentence, he also did something that Weisselberg, who's in Rikers right now, did not do, that Giuliani has not done. Cohen, unlike so many other people around Trump, did flip on his former boss, and he revealed in high-stakes, significant testimony to the United States Congress that Trump was in on all of this.
What I did each and every time is go straight into Mr. Trump's office and discuss the issue with him. He acknowledged to Alan that he was going to pay the $130,000 and that Alan and I should go back to his office and figure out how to do it.
That was about 5 years ago. The blow-by-blow, whatever one thinks of some of these figures, could be Avenatti who went to prison, could be Cohen who went to prison, could be Weisselberg who's in prison right now. The big question we're dealing with is not your feelings or opinions about these people. And it's not supposed to be the jury's feelings. In fact, there can be very compelling testimony from people that juries don't like, or that they hate, or that they might fear. Convicted murderers, drug dealers, gang members, senior mafia capos. They sometimes make some of the most damning witnesses because it ain't a popularity contest. It certainly ain't supposed to be a political campaign, even if it involves discussions of past campaigns. It's a much narrower question. Does this person have firsthand knowledge of what they're talking about? And can any of it be corroborated? And I'll tell you this, in Mr. Cohen's case, the answer to both is yes, which is bad news for Trump. The New York DA's office continued to investigate all of those sordid schemes and payments and look at whether Cohen's story added up beyond just what he said. What did he know? What did he do? But what else on paper corroborated all of this? And after a pretty lengthy process, and we've pressed some people, including people close to the investigation, about why it took so long, the Manhattan DA did indict Trump through a grand jury probe that had heard testimony from exactly those witnesses I mentioned, including Cohen, Daniels, and the reclusive but pivotal figure in all of this, the tabloid publisher David Pecker. And many of them are expected to bring their testimony, the testimony which helped charge Donald Trump, they're going to bring it to this trial. Then there's Joe Tacopina. I mentioned that we always try to go to the source. He was, at the time, a key defense lawyer in New York for Donald Trump on this high-stakes case. We had him on The Beat, and he vehemently defended what he said were the reasons why this shouldn't be a case at all for his then-client, defendant Trump, when we discussed this on The Beat. And these payments were made, and they were, according to federal filings, classified on the Trump side as legal services. That was false, wasn't it?
The payments were made to a lawyer, not to Stormy Daniels. The payments were made to Donald Trump's lawyer, which would be considered legal fees. This would exist irrespective of the campaign.
You're making a potential defense that he would have paid this out regardless. Now, that was interesting. All these years later, and that was just about a year ago, Tacopina, who at the time was representing Trump, he since left that case, was really making the Cohen argument. So Cohen fell down, but Tacopina is making the same argument that whatever money went to the lawyer, or whatever Trump did, he was told to do, but he wasn't in the loop. Now, remember, if you've been watching our entire special report, I said a couple minutes back, criminal intent. That's what matters. The debate's not over the money. We know the money went over there. The debate is over whether Donald Trump had the criminal intent, knew what was going on, as Cohen and others say he did, or whether he was just signing something, and as Tacopina argues, just went over the lawyer's legal fees, and the other people were filling in the details. And the DA ultimately was the first prosecutor to indict a former president. Others, of course, have followed since then. And, again, in our effort to get the facts, we actually had the then-sitting DA Bragg, who's now leading this case and not doing any interviews lately. It was months before that happened when he came on the beat. And I asked him about indicting Trump back then, how much controversy there'd been about the process. There'd been other theories and other possible crimes people said he should act on. Here's what he told me.
As I said back in April in a statement, the investigation's ongoing. This is one chapter. I caution people against reading ahead. The work never stopped, and we're going to continue to do that.
One chapter, and we're going to continue. That's what the DA told us face to face while sitting in the office. Now, we don't know exactly what was in his mind at that point. Was it up in the air? Was he still gathering facts? Was he closing out one case to continue on another? Was he thinking this was winding down? Or did he say one chapter because he knew the biggest chapter was about to begin and that he would do something that no one in the history of American law and every prosecutor around the country, and prosecutors do dream about big cases, but they're supposed to follow the facts, that he knew then the chapter that was coming would be the biggest chapter of all, the indictment of a former president. And he acted first, and while there's been much discussion that some of the other cases are legally potentially more serious, by acting first, he got his case going. And Trump and his high-priced lawyers and all his tricks and all his government connections has gotten some other cases slowed down, delayed, fouled up. Not New York, where there's an independent prosecutor. Not New York, where even a future president would have no ability to pardon any crime convicted in New York. The DA did what so many others had not. He acted first, and that is part of the reason why he now will be the first to put defendant Trump on trial.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.